And joining us now, White House National Security Adviser Robert O'Brien. Welcome to Fox News Sunday.
Great to be with you, Chris.
After first denying it, Iran now admits that it accidentally shot down that Ukraine airliner with 176 people on board. But Iran's foreign minister says, and we're putting it up, human error at time of crisis caused by U.S. adventurism led to disaster. A couple of questions. What does President Trump think of Iran's effort to shift the blame for the shoot-down of the civilian airliner? And is there anything the president can do beyond tweets to support the thousands of protesters in the streets?
Well, that's a great question. First of all, our condolences go out to the families and friends of the folks who were lost on Ukraine Air Flight 752. A tragedy, but the Iranian response is typical. First, they covered it up. And then when social media came out with photos of the missiles, they couldn't cover it up. Then they said the plane veered towards sensitive military area. That turned out not to be true. And now Zarif, who's one of the great dissemblers in international diplomacy, is attempting to shift the blame to the United States. And so we reject that. The Ukrainians have to have an international investigation. It has to be transparent. They have to apologize. They have to pay compensation to the families. And they need to make sure this never happens again.
And what can we do to help the protesters in the street, some of whom are calling for the supreme leader, the Ayatollah Khamenei, to step down?
Well, what's interesting is they're chanting death to the dictator. And when President Trump tweeted yesterday in Farsi, it had 200,000, in support of the protesters, it had 200,000 likes. I'm told that's the world record for number of likes on social media for a Farsi language tweet. So, unlike past administrations where there hasn't been support demonstrated for the Iranian people, President Trump has made it clear throughout his administration that he stands with the people of Iran, not with the regime, and we're going to continue to do so.
There's been quite a debate this week about the president's justification for taking out Iranian General Qasem Soleimani. He has said, top administration officials have said, you have said that there was an imminent threat. The president was a little bit more specific about that threat when he sat down with Laura Ingraham on Friday. Take a look.
I can reveal that I believe it would have been 4 embassies, and I think that probably Baghdad already started.
But members of Congress who attended a 75-minute briefing with the Secretaries of State, Defense, the CIA directors say there was not a single mention during those 75 minutes, classified briefing, members of Congress, about imminent threats to U.S. embassies. So why is he saying it on television, but top officials didn't tell members of Congress?
Well, I think something we've been clear on, and I've seen the intelligence on this, Chris, and it was very strong. And look, in some ways, I would love to release the intelligence and show the American people, and I can tell you that they can trust the administration on this. Unfortunately, we don't want to lose that valuable stream of intelligence that will allow us to protect Americans going forward. Going to the briefing in Congress, what we've always said, and what I've said from day one, is that there were severe threats to American diplomats, to American soldiers, sailors, airmen, Marines, and to American facilities in the region, Iraq, likely Syria, and potentially other countries that I won't name now. So, I think what the president said is consistent with what we've been saying since day one.
Can you explain, because it does seem to be a contradiction. He's telling Laura Ingraham, our esteemed colleague, but in a 75-minute classified briefing, your top national security people never mentioned this to members of Congress. Why not?
So I wasn't at the briefing, and I don't know how the Q&A went back and forth. I mean, sometimes it depends on the questions that were asked or how they were phrased. I don't know. I wasn't there. All I can tell you is we've been clear from the start that there were very significant threats to American facilities in the region and to American military officials, officers and men and women, and also to U.S. diplomats. And I think that's consistent with what the president is saying now.
And would you agree with what the president said, that there were specific imminent threats to 4 U.S. embassies?
Look, it's always difficult, even with the exquisite intelligence that we have, to know exactly what the targets are, but it's certainly consistent with the intelligence to assume that they would have hit embassies in at least 4 countries. But again, we knew there were threats to American facilities. Now, whether they were bases, embassies, it's always hard until the attack happens, but we had very strong intelligence that they were looking to kill and maim Americans at U.S. facilities in the region. And so I think the president's absolutely right when he talks about the threats to America that came from Soleimani, that came from the Quds Force, and that came from their proxies.
I want to step back a little bit and talk about the whole question of the administration's strategy for dealing with Iran. The U.S. imposed still more sanctions on Iran on Friday, and the Secretary of State, Secretary of Treasury said you have two goals. You want Iran to behave like other nations in the world, and you want them to stop their nuclear program. But let's look at the record so far. The administration has now imposed sanctions on more than 1,000 Iranian companies, organizations, and individuals. Back in September, the Treasury Secretary said, basically, we have cut off all funding to Iran. But instead of caving, Iran is moving step by step out of the nuclear deal, and in recent months it hit 6 ships, attacked Saudi oil facilities, and set fire to the U.S. Embassy in Baghdad. You said this weekend in an interview with Axios that you think Iran is now more likely to negotiate. But the maximum pressure campaign, at least if you look at the last 6 months, has made Iran less aggressive. More aggressive, rather, not less aggressive.
Look, I think the maximum pressure campaign is working. It's demonstrable that's working. The Iranian economy is contracted by at least 10%. I mean, we haven't seen that with the modern economy in many, many years. Iran went from producing 3 to 4 million barrels of oil a day down to 150 to 400,000 barrels, depending on the day. Iran is being choked off, and Iran's going to have no other choice but to come to the table. We had to get out of the JCPOA. It was a terrible deal. It had a sunset clause, and I don't think a lot of people realize that under the JCPOA, this year in 2020, Iran would have been permitted to buy advanced ballistic missiles, main battle tanks, fast attack jets, a whole range of weapons would have been on the shelf for the Iranians.
I agree with all of that, and you've certainly heard them, but they haven't been less aggressive. They haven't indicated that they're going to come to the table. In fact, they've been more aggressive, and they're pulling out of the nuclear deal. So why do you say, as you've said this weekend, you think that they're now more likely to negotiate?
Because Iran is being choked off, and Iran's going to have no other opportunity. There's no other way for them to get the money they need to fund the Guard, to fund their regime, to fund their malign activities. And you're seeing protests now breaking out across Iran, and we've seen it now for several months. People are fed up with this regime. If Iran wants to maintain a modern country, a modern economy, they're going to have to come to the table and negotiate. I think that's highly likely.
But I remember in September, you were the National Security Advisor then. President Trump was at the UN. I interviewed the Iranian President Rouhani. The President and the French President Macron were trying to get him even to get on the phone and talk, and he refused to do so. I will tell you, he said at that time to me, there is no chance we're going to negotiate unless and until the U.S. lifts sanctions.
What's going to cause them to negotiate is the pressure on their economy. And when you've got students out chanting death to the dictator, and when you have thousands of Iranians out protesting in the street, that's the sort of pressure that's going to bring them to the table. And listen, the president has made it very clear to Iran, we're not talking about regime change. We want to see an Iran that forswears nuclear weapons, that stops taking Americans hostage, that stops supporting proxies and terrorism in the region, and stops building these ballistic missiles, which we saw them launch last week. We can get there, and I think, by the way, Chris, you're going to see more support from our allies in the coming days and week in Europe as they realize how dangerous this Iranian situation is.
All right, let's change a little bit. Iraq's prime minister has sent a message to the United States. I want to put it up on the screen. He's asked the U.S. to send representatives to Iraq to put in place a mechanism for implementing Parliament's decision for the safe withdrawal of forces from Iraq. But Secretary of State Pompeo says that we will continue our mission there. Question, on what grounds is the U.S. saying we're going to ignore the request by a sovereign nation to leave?
Well, with respect to the resolution you're talking about, that was a non-binding resolution, so it seems like they've learned something from our democracy with non-binding resolutions.
This was a specific statement by the Prime Minister.
This was a non-binding resolution passed by a Shia-only group of legislators. The Sunnis boycotted it, the Kurds boycotted it. And
but the Shia represent a majority. They can control the parliament.
We'll see what happens when they have a full vote. But in any event, our goal is to get out of Iraq as well. The President said we want to be out of the Middle East, but what we need to do is leave on our terms, and we need to leave in a fashion in which ISIS, Daesh has been fully eliminated. We took care of the physical caliphate, and we're working very hard now to mop up the rest of ISIS. We saw that with the raid that took out al-Baghdadi. We've made tremendous progress there. Well, we will certainly work with the Iraqis. We look forward to doing so. We talk with them every day. We talk with our counterparts there, and I think we're going to have, we'll come up with a resolution. We had a team from NATO here this week. I think you're going to see far more NATO involvement in Iraq. So this will be a multilateral
But you say to leave on our terms. They're a sovereign country. If they tell us to leave, you're saying we're still going to leave on our terms?
Look, we'll work with the Iraqis, and we look forward to leaving an Iraq that's safe and that's secure and that's independent, and that's what the Iraqis want as well, and we're going to continue to work with all our partners in Iraq.
I'm running out of time. I got a couple of quick questions. There's a report today that the U.S. is expelling a dozen Saudi servicemen who've been training at U.S. military bases, this after that terrible shooting at Pensacola. Do we have indications that more of these Saudi servicemen had ties to extremism?
I don't want to say that. I think Secretary Esper's done a great job over the Pentagon in reviewing the way that we vet foreign troops that come over and train with Americans. We've had a long-standing relationship with the Saudis to train their pilots. We work with them both in Saudi Arabia.
So why are we kicking them out?
Well, I think we're being very careful. Obviously, Pensacola showed that there had been errors in the way that we vetted, and I think out of an abundance of caution, Secretary Esper's taken these actions to protect our servicemen and women.
Finally, let's talk about Congress. President Trump says he didn't notify the congressional leaders, the Gang of Eight, the majority and minority leaders, the heads of the intelligence committees beforehand about the attack on Soleimani, basically because he didn't trust him. Here he is this week.
So they want us to call them. Now, Schiff is a big leaker. You know, he leaks to crazy CNN. Off the record, they've got the #1 terrorist in the world, Soleimani. And they're going to get him. They're going to take him out in the next 10 minutes.
Ambassador O'Brien, can you point to a single instance when President Trump, your administration, has given sensitive national security information to top congressional leaders about an ongoing military operation, and they have leaked that to the media?
I think what President Trump is doing is something very consistent with what President Obama and other leaders did. President Obama did not brief the congressional leadership before the sensitive raid on Osama bin Laden. He did not brief the congressional leadership prior to taking out Anwar al-Awlaki in Yemen. This is
but he
standard.
Never said it's because I don't trust them to leave.
This is standard procedure, and as soon as Soleimani was taken off the battlefield, the Gang of Eight was notified, the intelligence committees and key leaders in Congress were notified. I participated in a number of those calls, and then we had a very long briefing, as you referenced at the top of your show, 75 minutes with all the members of Congress, both the House and Senate. So we think we've met our obligations in notifying Congress, and we think we're also very consistent with the Obama administration, the Bush administration, and the Clinton administration.
Specifically, is there reason to believe that if that information had been given to Adam Schiff, he would have leaked it?
Look, I think there's always a concern when you have an operation that is this sensitive, and the lives of our servicemen and women are in danger as we go after a leading terrorist. You have to be extraordinarily careful with that information, no matter who it is.
Finally, as you know, the House has voted to limit the president's war powers. The Senate is working on that. Under what circumstances would the administration feel it had to go to Congress to get approval for action against Iran?
Well, I think that's set out in a number of cases. So under Article 2 of the Constitution, the president is allowed to exercise military power to defend the American people and defend our soldiers, sailors, airmen, and Marines. And if it's in the national interest and the action doesn't rise to the level of war, so that's a long and substantive involvement, the president has that Article 2 power to take action to protect America. And that's what we did here, and that's what we'll continue to do in the future. If that changes and there's a situation where we expect a conflict that'll have a scope and duration that's similar to war, certainly we would go to Congress. And again, I think we're on firm legal footing here, very similar to President Obama, President Bush, President Clinton.
Ambassador O'Brien, thank you. Your first time on Fox News Sunday. I hope we didn't scare you off and that you'll come back.
I look forward to it. Thank you, Chris.
Thank you, sir.